Thank you very much for the warm words at the beginning. We are now at the last of our panels, the coping panel, and what I tried to look at when I prepared that is to look at how the system is coping, of course, but the more I looked into it, I realized it is not coping at all, because nothing really has happened now, which might sound strange. So what I'm tried to do here is that I, from a Weberian perspective, trying to think of my ideal world, how it should have happened, to understand what has happened. And I, frankly, because I'm the least qualified speaker you have here today, I took the liberty to only put stuff up there of which I'm not sure about, what I'm wondering about, and that I do not understand. So keep that in mind when you're asking me later, that the answers will probably always be, well, that is a great question. So when we look at what I call the not lawyer politician's perspective, at leaving the EU, not at Brexit. Brexit is a word so overfilled with stuff that I try to avoid it here. But leaving the EU, actually, and this is already for the UK, is quite easy, because you only need 2 legislative decisions, and you actually just need 1 to leave the EU, and actually you don't just need 1 executive decision, but for the UK you need a legislative decision, and you have to allow your government to notify the European Council that you're leaving. And the second one is even optional, because you do not have the second, you do not need the second step to actually leave. You will leave also without a declared next step in that, and you have 24 months time for the second step, and when you're a WTO member you fall back to that automatically, and this 24 months are not even a deadline, they are rather a guideline. You can go there and ask for more months, and so this seems like an easy task at first sight. And we have the first step done already with an overwhelming majority of almost 500 MPs from 650 who declared that the government is allowed to notify the European Council that you're leaving. And you could be done by now, but as you want to try to go further, they looked, okay, how to manage the transition period and what comes next. And then we have, now again, it is not so hard when you're not a lawyer, and I have the same slide that you had, but from a very different perspective. You said, well, look at all the problems that these states have. I say, well, this is perfect. It's a menu. You know, you can pick one. There are so many states in the world who are not members of the European Union, but do have a relation with the European Union. So it's really not rocket science. You know, we will say, well, actually, we take Norway, and then tell the lawyers and the civil servants, work that out. We will have Norway, and then you go to a balcony and declare the people, we've done it. So, but this is how politics should work. You would now send the whip to the parliament and count the votes and run some, I don't know, some focus groups and figure out which option would be the one that needs the least persuasion and the least effort. I personally think it would be the Switzerland option. The European Commission says it would be Canada, but you can see, and then you collect your votes and ignore the rest. And this is ruling by majority, and this is how Parliament works, and Parliament is all that matters, we learned from Andrew yesterday. But as we know, it is not happening. So why is that not happening? No one is picking any option. They are even trying to get behind the first initial decision, the only decision they already had. They want to take it back, have another referendum, or directly declare that they are not leaving, or what's that. So nothing is happening here. And this is what makes me wondering, and grim times need funny animations. And so why is that not happening? This is my central question. Why is the House of Commons, the central institution for political decision making in the UK's political system, unable to deliver a decision here? And I look at 3 probable answers. To say it first, I think the most important answer here is politics, and I will not look at politics. I think it's personal politics on both sides of the House, personal grudges that really make these organizations not functioning the way they should do. But I put that aside, like I said, I put aside all the complications that we have heard so much the last 2 days, because I really think that the people in charge are also not aware of how complex it is. So when they are not aware of how complex it is, they should not be stopped by it. They should be able to just pick one. It might be a super stupid decision they will regret later, but they should not be hindered because ignorance is bliss and they could go there. But what I will look is the surrounding reasons. The Brexit arithmetic reasons will be the first, sociopolitical reasons later, and then the polity reasons, which I think are the most interesting, but no spoilers. So Brexit arithmetic. We've heard a lot about already that the parties are divided and that their position is unclear. And I just want to highlight that once more by presenting you this. This on the left side is the predicted leave vote. What is that? As you know, probably all, is that the referendum was not held in the parliamentary constituencies, but in local government areas. So it is hard to directly compare them because they are not always the same, but they are super smart people like Chris Henretty, who are able to model on stuff about how they know that certain things influence voting behavior and come up with something that is at least close to what the vote in the constituency could have been. And he published that a few years ago, so this is also old, but this is when the Brexit negotiation started. That was the situation. That was the last election they had in 2015, and what we see here is for every constituency the leave vote against the vote share for the party. And we see for UKIP, you might remember UKIP, this is super clear, and for the Greens also, but they have not so many votes, so this is less strong evidence. We see for Lib Dem already that, and it becomes most interesting when you look like beyond the 30% threshold, because this is where you could actually win. And in the zone where they could win something, it is all over the place. And it becomes even stranger when we look at the Tories and Labour. And this is important, I think, because always when we say the parties are divided, they are not divided. Divided means split in two. Labour is all over the place. And when we think of that, again, as from a Weberian perspective, each of this dot is a human being trying to win an election. And they have to position themselves somewhere. And when Simon yesterday told us that people are not aware of what might the actual position of the party on Brexit be, this might be because it is not possible to come up with a coherent campaign. And they tried both to avoid to talk about Brexit in the last election campaign, because it is not possible to fight it coherently with these figures. And then again, this leads to a situation that wherever you go, you will lose votes and you will lose MPs. So you have to make up your mind which would be the less worse way to go. And unfortunately, there is nothing to help you with. The data on the referendum polls today, they are not changing in a way that would really help you. We saw, again, we saw that yesterday already. These polls are not helping, and Simon said we don't see anything really here, but I would disagree here. What we see, the surge of Labour here, is really, really interesting, because this was the campaign, the May campaign, that crashed. Interesting case for itself. But it was also Jeremy Corbyn opening up to more positions. He was not going somewhere. He was saying, well, we now also want a good Brexit. And everyone was like, oh, now he's pro-Remain. Oh, he's maybe we'll have a second referendum. He opened up for more positions, and that might have helped him to go somewhere. And now we are at a stage, like in the last few weeks, where we actually see something happening. And again, of course, then the Conservatives try to push, or some Conservatives try to push for an election when something is happening. But my point is, there is nothing that helps you out of this absolute, not dilemma, but multi-lemma you're in for the big parties here. And so you have to go somewhere, and you will lose MPs wherever you go. And this comes at a especially bad time for losing MPs. What we see here is 100 years of parliament, and always the strongest party's distance to the majority in the House, as it was by the election. Not over, so this is why we're still at -8, and now I don't know the actual figure, how far the strongest party in parliament is now gone. And what we see, interestingly for me, is that there have been times of dysfunctional low majorities already in the last 100 years. So this is not news. But the system always recovered somehow. They managed to come back from that. And now since 2010, we have 3 election periods in a row where no side was able to win a majority. And so this is a continuously not functioning situation. So I wonder what happened between 2005 and 2010 that switched the situation to a way where no one is able to win a majority, the majority that is desperately needed to take any decision, especially a hard one, if like the Brexit decision, which takes me briefly to socio-political reasons that might have that positions are so hard to overcome. And when we look at the last 15 years, what happened in the UK, it was quite a lot. A lot of things we do not talk about so much anymore. The war, security, terrorism, I call it, situation, the 7/7 bombings, the heavy casualties the British Army took in Afghanistan mostly and in Iraq, and the ongoing discussion about Islam in the UK. When we remember, especially when we think of UKIP, how much everyone talked about UKIP is not about leaving the EU. It is an anti-Islam, anti-minorities party. And the economic crisis, again, these all were things that might have, I don't know, I'm wondering about, that might have hardened personal positions in a way that it is less easy to persuade someone else and then to gain a majority. When you gain a majority, you can only do it by persuading someone, otherwise you would already have a majority. And then again, the parliamentary expenses scandal of 2009 surely did not help. So this was all in the last 15 years, and I think these are all factors we are not thinking so much about right now that might have made it harder to win over the majority that you need. But when we look at the polity reasons for that, what happened polity-wise there, we have here in 2010 boundary changes. And this is something I have hardly seen anywhere discussing. In 2010 there were boundary changes, and the Commission was very, very proud that they made the fairest and best boundary changes ever. And of course, when you make very, very fair boundary changes to all parties, you won't have a big majority in Parliament. So fair boundaries might not be the best thing for a parliamentary system that relies on big majorities. And when it was the 5th periodic review of the constituencies, and these were the 5 before. I don't have time to look deeper into that. I have to write a PhD this year. Anyone who is able to do that, feel free to take it, because I find that was astonishing. And the 6th periodic review, just as a joke of history, is right now stuck in Parliament because they cannot agree on. So this is one polity-wise, and the second thing we have, also super, super fascinating, is when we look at the places of political decision-making in the UK, we have, of course, the House of Commons as the central body, like I said, and then the Lords. But we now also have the Scottish Parliament and the virtual evil Parliament, which is not an official parliament, but a place for decision-making also. Then we have the assemblies, London Assembly, most important assembly, I think, for politics in the UK. And we have these devolved authorities that are emerging without no one really discussing it. We have 9 right now. I always say we, I mean you. It's Stockholm syndrome. So 9 of these, and they mostly are about transport right now. They try to organize transport, but they have elected mayors, they have councils, and I'm pretty sure they will not go away, and it's only a matter of time until the elected mayor of, I don't know, Tees Valley Combined Authority will tweet something about some other policy issue, and because these are places where parties that are not in government can spend the winter like Labour wished for in Scotland, and now we see that the SNP is using this base in Scotland very, very well to influence national politics. We have these 8 more who have already got the consent but are not in action yet, so this is a growing thing then, and I'm happy that I wanted when I did that on Friday. Should I put on the Scottish National Courts? Are they so important? Maybe. This is the point. We have the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, and we have the Scottish National Courts. And back then it was, well, the one court, the Court of Session, I think, he agreed, so that was easy. But what when a Scottish court disagrees with central government? What is, we don't know. This is great, we don't know. And the ideal answer should be, who cares? When the House of Commons decides something, that's it. Maybe the Lords will have a say, but that's really it. And then we have the most notorious and reckless of all, the people. The people who have spoken, the people who should be given things back to. They are also really not a central, also Andrew talked about that, a central place for decision making, for policy decision making. These referendums we had before, and all 3 of them were, I think, attempts from the Cameron government to put problems that were not solvable in the Commons outside. He was outsourcing stuff. That was what he could do. And it went well 2 times, and the 3rd time they handed it back to the Parliament. Actually, they did not even hand it back to the Parliament, they handed it back to the government. And the decision, I think also that is important to keep in mind, the decision to put it back to Parliament was not, Parliament had no play in it. It was, they were not suing for this, and they were not asking for this. It was a private person and the Supreme Court that then gave the whole Brexit mess to Parliament. So really, there are a lot of bodies who influence decision-making beyond the central decision-making body, the House of Commons, and this is, of course, weakening the position of the institution in a way that becomes hard to solve a complex problem like Brexit, but many others. And this is my conclusion here. Many factors, like I said, decrease the situation. The second one, because I tell my students, and this always needs to be in any ending of any scientific paper, we need more funding for more research, because this is highly complex, super interesting. We know enough for funding, but not enough to be done. And what I think most important here is that many of these factors will still be there when Brexit has ended, however it will end, may it ever end. But the devolution cases especially, but the dysfunctional majorities in the House of Commons, they are not caused by Brexit, and they will not go away with Brexit, and they will keep on troubling the political system of the UK in the upcoming years. That's all I know. Thank you for listening.